Welcome to High Strangeness, where we ask questions and explore all that is strange and unexpected in our reality.
Welcome to the High Strangeness podcast. This week we have a three-part episode with an intriguing guest, James Kelly, who claims to have experienced a series of alien abductions. In recent months, he's had intimidating encounters with men in black. Now, he's a lifelong resident of small-town America. James is an average 58-year-old man with a wife and family, and he finally is opening up about strange events that have been happening to him over 50 years of his life. He's putting himself in a vulnerable position because he believes he needs to say these things. He's written a book about all of this called Lone Believers, and he's on our podcast show now. This is a High Strangeness episode. So sit back, take it in, and see what you think. Welcome to High Strangeness. I'm Tony, and this is the place where we talk about all things strange and unexpected in our reality. Welcome to today's episode, where we're going to jump into a fascinating and maybe a controversial topic, which could be alien abductions and other things. Joining us today is James Kelly, who has had a unique and extraordinary experience, and he's got that story to share. And also we have Fred Zewe, who is a MUFON investigator, Mutual UFO Network, and more specifically an ERT investigator, which we're going to learn about in just a little bit. Now, after experiencing some encounters with entities and other things, James has gone on a path to recall and understand these things, and maybe even try to figure out and make sense of what's happened to him. This is also where Fred gets involved, because as a MUFON investigator, he brings to the picture years of experience as an investigator, reviewing cases, and doing investigations. So what we get today is a seasoned investigator and an experiencer who has just wrote a book recently as well. And we'll get into all those things. So I'm really excited to have both of these gentlemen on the show today and to learn more about what's happened here. And so we're going to get some insight. We're going to talk about this, but I want to welcome you guys to the show. James and Fred, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Absolutely.
Great to be here.
Cool. And how are you guys doing right now? We are taping in the very end of November. Are you guys doing well, and are you ready for the holidays?
Absolutely. Ready to... Forks are up for the turkey, and yeah.
Yeah, we're expecting rain, snow. It's been raining all day, as you would know, Tony, and we're expecting a bunch of snow tonight, so we'll see how Thanksgiving goes.
We'll see how it goes, yeah. So you brought this up, James. You are in Utah as well. And how long have you lived in Utah?
I've lived in Utah my entire life. I spent most of my life in American Fork, and then I married a sweet girl from Spanish Fork, and I do what she says, so we moved to Spanish Fork, and that's where I live currently. So,
Utah County all the way.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
That's good. And Fred, you are joining us from, is it Nebraska?
Yeah, Bellevue, Nebraska, just a suburb of Omaha. I grew up in central Iowa, Marshalltown, Iowa, and went to Iowa State, and did college thing and whatnot. So, yeah.
This is good.
Yeah.
But before we dive into things with James, I do have one question, Fred, so that the audience is aware. I think most people know what MUFON is, but will you take a minute and just tell us what MUFON is and ERT?
Okay. MUFON is Mutual UFO Network. It's just probably the largest UFO information gathering organization. So if you see a light in the sky and you say, "Oh, there's a UFO," you can report it to MUFON. You look up MUFON and how to report it. UFO, click on it, put your report. Then MUFON basically sends, if it's here in Nebraska, we get cases here in Nebraska, and so we look at it and we write an email and contact the witness, and we set up a date and time whenever we want to do an interview, just like this podcast. We set them up, we chit chat with them. Well, with ERT, I have another specialty, which is the experiencer research team. And guess what? James right there was one of my cases.
Well, thank you
So,
for sharing
yeah.
that. I mean, that's good information for people to have. Now, I bet, James, for you, there are good investigators out there for MUFON, but this was probably really good news for you to talk to somebody with a specialty about experiencing something. Is that how you took that? I mean, did you have the chance to talk with MUFON in general, other people, and then they directed you to an ERT specialist, or how did that work out?
It was kind of strange because I was really nervous about sending it to MUFON. I knew who MUFON was. They've been around since the 60s. But I sent it to them with encouragement from my wife, and I waited, and nothing really happened, and I kept waiting, and I guess the story is it went to somebody in Utah. They didn't, I don't know if they wanted to deal with me, but then it went, I think, Fred to Montana. Is that where some guy in
Yeah, I don't think there's
some guy in
there, I
Montana?
don't think there was any. Yeah, there wasn't any ERT specialist in Utah, so they actually sent it to some guy in Montana. Well, I guess the guy in Montana wasn't able to do it, so they reassigned it to me here in Nebraska.
Yeah.
And then I got it. But James and I both thought it was kind of God sent. Like I was supposed to get this,
Yeah.
get this case because James and I really hit it off really well, really well.
Yeah, because I was really nervous. I hadn't talked about this with anybody for 52 years, including my siblings, my wife, friends, anybody. So exposing myself to somebody I didn't know was very traumatizing to me. But Fred was so kind and talked me through it. There's no right or wrong answers. Just tell me what's going on. And, his voice was always very calm and soothing, even when during our conversation I started having a panic attack about sharing all of this with him. He's like, it's okay, I'm an experiencer. And then he starts sharing his experiences he had, and it really gave me a lot of peace. And so if anybody's out there who's had an experience, I highly recommend contacting MUFON because they will honestly take care of you.
That's great. Yes. And I believe there's people out there with different levels of experiencing of things. And
Absolutely.
it's good for them to know this.
Yeah, I have to say that too, Tony. You're not going to, I've been down the rabbit hole quite deeply. So if you want to move right in and say, hey, I want Fred Zewe, you might be able to get me,
That's
but
right.
again, but each state totally has their own ERT. And again, that ERT specialist is not always going to be as broad-minded and open-minded as some of us. I am very broad-minded. So, but that's a good start, And if you want to, if you can talk to James or talk to Tony here, and if you want just to talk off the cuff, get a hold of me. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that sounds good. Now, as we get into stuff here now, James, I want to start off, if it's okay with you, with so there are events throughout your life. This is what I understand.
Yes.
And these are things that have not been shared till recently.
Yes.
So can we take the audience from your earliest experience and just move us through? And then, Fred, I know maybe through your investigation you've done some work to look back at things. I'm not sure. Or maybe you just focused on the immediate situation. Not sure. And I think it'd be great if you could come in as well and share throughout the discussion as well. Tell us, oh yeah, this area is where we looked at and blah, 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 so on and so forth. So, James, just go ahead and start us off.
Okay. I was actually, with my first experience, I was only 6 years old. And I grew up in a town of American Fork, where, Tony, you probably have heard of American Fork. But back in 1972, it wasn't the same town. We had a candy shop. We had a butcher shop. You had to go to the bakery for your bread. It was a completely different place to grow up. You could go out on a Saturday and ride your bikes all day, and your parents would just say, be home by, the street light better be off when you get home, because if it's on, you're in trouble. And it was just a great time to grow up. And, being a young kid, it was magical for me, because nothing was ever bad. Nothing was scary. I had my parents, I had my siblings. Everything was perfect. And I was in first.
James?
Yes.
How many siblings?
I have two older sisters. My oldest sister is 16 years older than me, which she's my sister, but we didn't really talk because she was 16 when I was born. And then I have a sister that's just a year and a half older than me, who has had experiences, but she's regressed them. And so,
Yes, sir.
but that's a different story. So, being in 6 years old and being in first grade and being a boy, which is different than being a young girl, all you think about in school, especially the last day of school, is getting out of school. You don't want to be in school. I mean, summer's coming up. It's going to be exciting. Going down and swimming in the swimming hole and catching fish and just having fun with your friends. And that's all I was thinking about that day. And as soon as that bell rang, man, I was gone. Let me back up just a little bit. Back in the day, you used to have what's called carnivals. Fred might remember this. When you graduate in elementary school, you had Ferris wheels and all kinds of candy cane, all kinds of stuff going on at these carnivals. And bless my mom, she gave me $2. Now, in 1972, $2 was a little bit of money. And I was so happy because I had $2. And I just went out there and I was buying candy, carameled apples, candy, whatever, going on all the rides. So by the time I got home after school, I was pretty much on a sugar rush. I was bouncing off the walls. So, once the bell rang, you went out to the carnival, had my fun, and then I went actually home. Well, my mom was a stay-at-home mom, so when I got home, I said, "Mom, can I sleep outside tonight?" She's like, "No, James, you're 6. Let's have you stay inside." And I just was relentless. I'm like, "Mom, I want to sleep outside. It's after school. It's the first day of summer vacation. Can I please stay outside?" And it took a lot of convincing. I think I wore her down
Right.
because she was like, "Oh, okay, finally. Okay." And I'm like, "Yes." So, after dinner, I went and grabbed my sleeping bag and my pillow and went to the fridge and grabbed some Coca-Colas and some chips, and I went outside and we had a fairly big yard, so I went out to the back part of my yard, laid my sleeping bag and my pillow down, and got in my sleeping bag, and it was starting to get evening, and I was just lying there, and I remember even to this day smelling the fresh cut grass that my dad had just barely mowed the lawn that day, and just lying there and thinking, "Oh, man, this is so awesome. Having my mom let me sleep outside for the first time." And so I was just lying there, eating Lay's potato chips and drinking Cokes and just watching the stars. I was a very curious boy being little and watching the stars, and I'd look up and see the Big Dipper and things. And I was lying there for quite a while. But then I noticed way out in the southwest, I noticed this light that was not there before. And it was pretty bright. It was brighter than the other stars. And I just kept looking at it like, wow, that's kind of cool. I've never noticed that star before. And I just kept looking at it and settling in and just enjoying being in the backyard, until all of a sudden the star went from fairly far away in the southwest to halfway towards my house within like a second. Like you blinked and it was there. And it was larger this time. It was still, I couldn't distinguish what it was, but it was a pretty bright object in the sky. And, I didn't know what it was. It could have been a helicopter, all I know. I don't know. And I just sat and kept watching it and watching it and watching it. And as time went by, and in my mind, I'm like, I wonder what this is. And as soon as I thought that, within a second, it was right over my house, 100 feet in the air. Exactly. That's what I thought too. And I became very scared. Remember, I was only 6 years old. And this craft was a large craft. It took up our entire backyard, some of our neighbors' backyard. And it was a black triangle shape, and on the bottom of it, it had 3 white lights on each side, a yellow orangish light in the middle, and then I could see windows along the sides. And then there was a big window in the front, and I can actually see people standing there. And I thought, oh my gosh, as a kid, all of these 1960s sci-fi serials, Buck Rogers stuff, started coming to mind, like, what is this? What's going on? And I was terrified. I laid down and covered my head with the sleeping bag, and I just thought to myself, oh my gosh, monsters or whatever, something's happening to me. And I started getting sweaty and I couldn't breathe, so I cracked my sleeping bag open, kind of like you do when you're scared at night with the covers, just enough for your mouth so you can breathe air through it. And all of a sudden, when I did that, I noticed that my whole yard and the neighbor's yard was illuminated with this bright light, almost like a helicopter had a light down. Yes.
Okay. Let me ask some questions about this.
Okay.
Thank you. And I hope this doesn't disrupt me
No.
stopping like this.
No,
But
you're
I think there's some pieces here that I think people would be interested in. You mentioned a triangle shaped ship, and from your memory, it was big enough to cover much of your property and your neighbor's property. Is that what you said?
Yes, and our property was
Wow.
about a half an acre. And our neighbor's property was probably a third of an acre, so it was fairly large.
Yes. And you're 6 years old, but when you look up, does it feel like it's a few 100 feet up? What did you
To me, it seemed like it was about 100 or so feet in the
Okay.
air. It was low enough that I could see the detail of the ship.
Wow.
And I actually sent Fred a very detailed drawing of what the ship looked like when I reported my thing. So, yeah, it was low enough that I could see even people standing in the glass.
And do you think, I know these are questions maybe at the moment you don't remember, but sometimes these things just get crystallized in your memory too.
Mm-hmm.
The air, the wind, the sounds. Did you feel anything coming down from the ship, or did everything just stop? Like, what, at that moment, which is a powerful moment, what was your impression of the environment with you, around you, under this thing?
I remember feeling a heaviness, like a heaviness of air. And I didn't remember this at the time, but through regression, I remember there was no sound of anything. The ship didn't make a sound. There was no crickets. It was just complete silence when all this was going on. Yeah.
Okay. Very good.
Very typical. Very typical of abduction. Yeah.
Yeah. Fred, you're saying that this is how it happens a lot of times.
Yeah. From a light, Kim Carlsberg was another abductee, very well-known abductee, and she too saw light. She was out in San Francisco area, saw this light in the distance, and next thing you know, it's right on front of her, 100 feet. Whenever you have a craft 100 feet away from you, you can almost certainly with 100% that you're having an experience. You don't have craft like this close. And for James at 6 years old, God bless him. I mean, he didn't freak out. He just observed it, and to feel all the feelings of that nature. It's very uncanny that this type of experience happens. But as James continues on, he has a connection with these people from a long time ago. So,
Yeah.
Thanks,
James.
Oh.
Thanks, Fred. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, I was sitting there and I noticed that this light was surrounding everywhere. And, it was almost like a helicopter's light that's, shines down when they looking for criminals and stuff like that. And all of a sudden I felt this feeling of love and calmness all of a sudden come over me. And I wasn't terrified anymore. It's a feeling that I can't describe. It's a feeling that I've never experienced, even with my child being born or being married to my wife. It's such a deep, resonant love that I was feeling. And I opened the covers to my sleeping bag and I looked up, and that's the last thing I remembered of that. The next thing I remembered of, I was actually inside the craft, lying on a bed. And it was more of a table. Yes, go ahead.
So this is, you look up, and then the very next thing is you're inside.
I'm inside.
Okay, I just want to make sure I heard that correctly.
I was
Thank
inside.
you.
I don't know if it was part of if it was a portal to the ship or a transportation to the ship, but I don't remember
Yeah.
doing that. I just remember waking up inside the ship, and it was very different than our rooms that we think about, with doors and different sort of things. It was white with glass, and it was just very warm and welcoming. I didn't feel like I was in fear of anything at all, and I was just calm. And the next thing that I remember is looking up and seeing this lady was around 6 feet tall, very, very beautiful. Very, very beautiful. I sent a picture, AI picture to Fred, and he agrees with me that maybe AI kind of exaggerated a little bit, but it was it was pretty close. But she walked up to me and placed her hand on me and called me Milo. And I'm like, what? My name is James. Who is Milo? She goes, your name is Milo. You're a star child. You're my son. And I'm like, what? No, I'm not your son. Yes, you're my son. And we just started conversing, but when I noticed, I wasn't moving my mouth. Everything was being done telepathically to me. And it was just a great experience when she was just there talking with me. As I was lying there, I thought, it would be great to go to your planet. And she says, no, you can't. And I'm like, why? It'd be kind of great if I could do that as a kid. It'd be kind of exciting to go to another planet. And she's like, no, you can't come. I'm here to receive you. And I'm like, what does receiving mean? I am here to teach you your higher self and abilities that you need to do. And I'm like, okay. And I sat up, and as I sat up and I was talking with her, she placed her hand on me, and immediately we were transported to her planet of Arcturia, which it surrounds actually the Arcturian star that's out. You can see it at night. It's like one of the brightest stars that's actually out there. And as we were there, we were standing on some steps, and they were gold and wood, and they led down, and you could see the whole city from that place. And she pointed and said, this is my home, Milo. And she started to explain everything about the Arcturian culture. We're all about love. We're all about compassion. We're all about intelligence, knowledge. And she went on for quite some time and explained it to me. And then she placed her hand on me again, and immediately we were standing above an ocean, a vast ocean. And when we were there, I looked up, and the sky wasn't blue like our sky. It was more of a purplish color. And I thought that was kind of strange. And then all of a sudden, we were underneath the water. And I was looking around, and I saw all of these plants, and they all had bioluminescence. And the outside of their leaves were glowing white and yellow and purples. And there was fish, if you can call them fish, I guess, that was there that looked nothing like our fish. And I said, oh, wow, this is awesome, because one of my childhood heroes was Aquaman. And soon as I thought that, we were gone. She took me away from the ocean, and we were actually gone. And throughout that night, we visited quite a few things on her planet, different locations of where she showed me, and then we came back to the ship. And I remember telling her that I'm very cold because of the temperature difference between, our planet and hers. And she goes, it's okay, just lie down. And as I was lying on the table, she put her hand on my chest, and I felt this incredible warmth, almost like I was in a hot tub, come over me. And she goes, son, you'll be okay. I'll be back. And she left. And she left me there. And I was why would she leave me here? This is a strange environment. Why would you leave me?
On the ship.
On the ship.
On the ship.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, why would you do that? And after a few minutes, I saw this young girl, which was she was probably about my age, skinny, and she was blue, and she seemed to be about the same age as I was, and she just stood in the doorway. And I said, "It's okay to come in," verbally, and she just stood there. And I said, "What's your name?" And she just stood there looking at me. I go, "It's okay, my name is James." And she just looked at me, and then all of a sudden in my mind I heard, "Milo, my name is Sari. I am your Starseed sister. You have to speak telepathically." And I'm like, "Okay." And she came over and started to introduce herself about, who she was and all about her background and things like that. And we just hit it off because it was a playmate. I thought of it as a playmate, another person, yay, on the ship that I can relate with. And it was just a great having her there. And I remember asking her, I'm like, "I'm hungry. Do you have any food?" And she says, "Yes." And she said, "Come on with me." And she walked me over to a table that was white and had chairs, and she sat there with me. And she goes, "Put your hand over the table, Milo, and think about what you want." And I'm like, "Oh, that's awesome. I can ask for anything." I can count candy, all this stuff. But I'm like, "I'm hungry. I want something to eat. And my favorite thing in the world is strawberries." And I thought, I put my hand there and I closed my eyes and nothing happened. And so she took my hand and we did it together. She goes, "Picture strawberries." And I pictured them, and all of a sudden there was a bowl of fruit that looked like, kind of like strawberries, but they weren't. They were a different color. And I tasted them, and they tasted like peaches and strawberries, kind of mixed, fused together. And I was amazed. I'm like, "Oh, wow, this is awesome." And she says, "Anything you can telepathically tell the ship to do, the ship will do." And so we spent many hours teaching me how to telepathically communicate, how to bring stuff in, like if I wanted a glass of water or things like that, I'd have to telepathically ask for that. And that, like I said, that went on for a couple of hours. Yes.
Well, we're going to be here for a while.
Yes, we are. And this is just the first
I've got a lot of questions.
out of 27 chapters.
This might be a multi-episode.
And that's fine. I'm glad to do it.
Yeah. No, this is great. Okay, I'm afraid that I will forget some questions.
Okay.
Because we're going through here, and almost every scenario and situation, I was like, my mind was racing. I want to be there mentally, right? I want to see it and experience it, and I think other people will enjoy that. Just putting themselves in that place. Okay. We're going to back up a little bit. You are in the ship. You mentioned that everything was white and glass.
Yes.
So explain that for a minute. I'm really trying to envision in my mind this. I'm putting myself there. Is this glass tables, or did the walls appear glass? Like, what do you mean by glass?
Okay, if you can imagine walking into a room that has perfect white marble with no blemishes, and the ceiling is perfectly white, the walls without glass are perfectly pure white, but the glass, where glass was black, almost like it was smoked glass. And the table was almost like stainless steel, but it wasn't cold, it was different. And then the table was like the floor, it was pure white substance, and the chairs around it were white, and then some kind of metal that was making the base of it in there. The lighting was bright, but it wasn't so bright that I couldn't see. If that makes sense. It's kind of hard to describe a light like that. It's not like a spotlight, but it's like almost like a bright filtered light, but it didn't really hurt my eyes to see that.
Yeah. The black, was this decorative accents, or was it screens, or was it
the black windows were actually, some of them were interactive screens, and
Okay.
one of them was you could see out. If you stood next to it, you could see out.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, so I could see the
that's-
stars and stuff through the window.
Oh, that's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
That is cool.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, I'm trying to be there.
Yeah, I'm
right?
sorry.
This is amazing.
And when I tell my
This is
You
amazing.
say, how high was the table off the floor with like a pedestal coming up in the regular, like, regular table type
yeah,
thing,
it was
scenario?
about as high as a dining room table. Yeah, it
Right.
wasn't very high, and I have to apologize because in my mind, I see this so clearly all the time, and
Yeah.
Right.
sometimes I don't stop to think that you guys don't. You don't see it, so I'm like, okay, back the truck up, okay.
Well, yeah, but I like what Tony, when you really, I mean, I like to look at the glass, I just saw transparent glass, like white,
Yeah.
transparent glass. When he said black, I'm like, what?
Yeah, and I go into like 4,000 words in the first chapter of this
Yeah.
book, really going into detail. So,
Okay.
on to be able to do that. So,
Yes, yes. Okay. Many more questions here.
Okay.
You described this great sense of love feeling when you were in the yard. Did you feel anything in the ship, or had you normalized to that, or was it just a different feeling when you were in the ship? Maybe the love was to prepare you for something. How do you interpret the feelings, and how did they transcend when you were in the ship?
I think now as an adult, I think it was more of preparing me as a child to make the transition instead of just taking me and plopping me. It was more like, it's okay. And that love, and then
Yeah.
that love continued why I was actually in the ship. And so I think it was just
Gotcha.
more of to mentally and physically relax me, so it wasn't such a shock
Yeah.
to see things that
I-
the world has said doesn't belong.
Yeah, I get
Yeah.
that. Arcturians,
Yes.
right? Did I say that
Mhm.
right? Don't know too much about this, but are these blue individuals?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. So this woman that approaches you, she's beautiful. Is she bluish,
Yeah.
or is she white? What does she look like?
She's very, like I said, she's 6 feet tall, very slender, physical looking woman. She looks like a human woman. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. Thanks, Fred. And she had on a white dress, and on her hands was gold, and all of the rings connected to her wrist. And then she had on a necklace and a headdress that was gold, as well. And she looked almost like royalty. And
Wow.
that's why I said she was the most beautiful woman, or being, I should say, that I've
Yeah.
ever seen. She had these huge,
amazing. Did you
our eyes. She had our eyes, but they were maybe 3 times the size, and they were just blue.
Oh wow.
They had whites, but the irises were just this deep ocean blue. And when you looked at them, it's like the world didn't matter.
Yeah. Wow. Hey Fred, if you have that picture, and that's the one that, if you can send
Yeah.
it to me, I'd love to paste it right
Sure.
on this
Okay.
as we're talking.
Yeah,
That'd be great.
Sure,
Yeah, I
I
have a
will.
couple of pictures that I can send to you. That will help
That'd be
people
great.
be able to do that.
Okay. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so yes, these are Arcturians. These are so now you've seen this beautiful lady who says she's your
Yes.
mother, or in some
Mhm.
way, right? And then there's this young girl that's about your
Mhm.
age, also Arcturian,
Mhm.
bluish, and stuff like that. And did she look? How did she?
She looked,
like? You could tell she was
yeah,
female.
I mean, she looked
How did
just
she
like a young girl, and she had the large blue eyes, very, very skinny, like a young girl. Her head was just a little bit oblong than ours is, and she still had the large blue eyes and very different tones of blue skin, but she looked like a normal 6-year-old girl. Yeah.
Normal hair.
Yeah,
and
I
things
mean,
like that?
Arcturians, some of them have hair and some of them don't. Some of them just have an oblong hair, then some of them have more of a white or a pure blondish looking hair. It depends. Yeah.
When going from the ship to what appeared to be your homeworld, so she said you couldn't come, but then she took you. I'm curious, do you feel like this was physically taken there, or do you feel like spiritually she took you there? Or was it something like, I'm curious, like, how did that work? Was it, do you feel like you physically went there, or was it something
No,
else?
I wasn't physically there. It was like a mind transformation. Like she took me, like you said, spiritually. So she took my mind, and we were both still on the ship, but she took me to Arcturia and led me over,
okay.
you know,
That
over
makes
everything,
sense.
what's going on. Yeah,
Powerful.
yeah. It's kind of like
Wow.
if you saw
She took you
John
to-
Carter of Mars, if you saw that movie where physically he's here, but there's a carbon copy of him somewhere else. It was kind of that, except for it was more spiritual.
Yeah. And she's taking you to various places. You said there were a number of
Yeah.
places that you had the opportunity to see. Did you get the impression this was like, was it based on your questions or interest, or was it like, here, let me show you where I'm
Yeah.
from? And how did you
I interpreted
that?
like she was showing me where we're from. It's like trying to get me, okay, Milo, this is the home. But she wasn't saying like, okay, you need to remember this, but like, okay, this is my home. This is where we live. This is the ocean. This is the different places. And so it was like she was taking me to show me, but it was almost like she was saying, trying to get me to remember.
Yes.
Because the starseeds are, I got to say this correctly because I don't want to confuse people, are reincarnated beings. And so as an Arcturian, I had the chance to live a different life and be here on Earth. So my spirit came and I was in this body, but my spirit's an Arcturian. So I'm having an earthly experience here.
Oh, I see. That was going to be my
Yeah,
question. So you are a child, but really not this physical, not this glove that
Yes.
you're wearing. It's not the glove. It's what's inside you is now carried over into this.
Yes,
Okay.
and Arcturians have, it's not like Earth where we just live and die. They have the chance to live tens of thousands of years. And at the end, they can say, okay, I want to go to the Creator. I've had a great life. I want to go. Or they can say, no, I want to be some being on a different universe or different planet or things like that. And so they have that opportunity to do it. I'm still trying to wrap my head around all of that, but I'm learning.
Yes. Fred, do you think through your investigative work and stuff that there are a lot of Arcturian people that are being made aware that they are also these starseeds here? Have you run across that?
Well, when you run the gamut of with ETs and go to the ET conferences, you run into a lot of people who have these sort of experiences. And again, it doesn't necessarily always have to be Arcturians. There's Pleiadians, there's Lyrans, there's the Lion people. There's James Gilliland from the East City Ranch that he talked to the Lyran, and the Lion people, so he's very in tune with the various beings, so yeah, Arcturians is just one of the many lovely people. You've got the Pleiadians, you've got the Nordics, and things of that nature. So it's a variable of amount of beings, But in James' case, again, here you're a little boy at 6 years old, and all of a sudden this blue woman comes up. I mean, I would probably like blue. That I don't, that would be. And I didn't that up when James talked about this woman. Beautiful woman. She's
Yeah.
blue. You know?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
So that would catch my attention right off the get-go, how tall you are, but you're blue, and it's
Yeah.
like, that's a little different, and so these are the type of things, and when you're out of body, like James was, you think 3D. Everything's a mental construct, it's
Yes.
not the same frequency.
Well, so let me ask you this, James. So I know we're not done with your first experience, or maybe we are close to that first experience being done. But I have a
Okay.
question in terms of when you were in the backyard and then you were in the ship. Do you believe, or maybe you can't tell, was that physically now in the ship? You were physically there, or do you think you were spiritually there and your body was still in the backyard? Do you have a feel or an opinion about
Yeah,
what
no,
that
I was physically on the ship. I was
On the ship,
physically on
okay.
the ship. So, yeah.
Okay. Pretty cool. All right. I completely diverted you from your story there, but I had a lot
No,
of questions.
I want people to
So-
ask questions because that allows me
Oh, yeah,
to help
absolutely.
them understand kind of what was going on.
Yeah.
I'm getting the new picture too.
Fred doesn't
so-
even know everything because I'm keeping this book kind of
I
hush
know.
hush. The only person that knows
Yes.
is really
Yeah.
is my wife and the editor, and so
Yeah.
and the editor's been converted, by the way. She didn't believe in UFOs, so.
Right.
But while I was on the ship and I was being trained by Sari, my Starseed sister, on how to exist and how to remember all these different things, she turned to me and says, "You have a gift of healing." And I remember her saying that. I'm like, "The gift of healing? I don't understand. What do you mean, the gift of healing?" She goes, "You have the gift of healing to heal." And I'm like, she goes, "Okay." And she put her hand over the table, and a beautiful plant appeared. And it was blue, and it had like bioluminescence around the leaves and things. And I could see that part of it was dying. That it was really like plants that die. And she goes, "Now what I want you to do is I want you to heal this plant." And I said, "What? I can't do that." She goes, "Yes, you can. Just like, remember how you got food and drinks of water and clothing? Do the same thing. Put your hand over the plant. Imagine in your mind the plant healing and push your energy down to the plant." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll try." And I tried it, and I opened my eyes and nothing happened. And she's like, "Milo, I need you to focus from your heart and put your hand over the plant and imagine that plant being healed." And so I did, and I closed my eyes and I tried to imagine that plant being healed, and I just felt this strangeness, almost like a tickle that was coming from my heart down through my hand. And as I opened my eyes, I saw a blue energy coming off of my hand, and the plant was healed. And I'm like, "I did it." And she goes, "Yes, you did." I go, "Can I try it again?" And she goes, "Yes."
Yeah.
And I tried it again, and it worked again. And so she was training me on how to do and practice my gifts that I was given by the Arcturians. And so that was a fun experience. But being a 6-year-old boy, I was missing my mom. My mom and I have always been close.
Yeah.
And I think she sensed that. And because she says, "Are you missing someone?" I'm like, "Yeah, I miss my mom." Because I felt like I had been on the ship for a whole day. And she goes, "Come with me." And we got up and we walked over. And she says, "Okay, this is a panel." And she touched it, and all of these different lights came on and buttons and things. She goes, "I want you to stretch forth your hand and touch the panel and imagine your mom being there." I'm like, "Okay." So I did that, and I could see my mom. It was an image, but I could see her, just like I was standing physically with her. She didn't react to me, but I could see her, and it was a comfort to me to be able to do that. So
Do you feel like that was a peering into, like you could see her through some means, like what was going on at that moment? Or do you think it was just an image?
I think it was more of an image that I created to relax me.
Gotcha.
Because she was starting my whole training with my telepathic abilities. And this went on for the next 52 years, on and off. And so the older I got, and later, I can tell you an experience if we have time later, but she grew up with me and different sort of things. But from being on the ship and practicing different things, Lauren, which was my name of my stepmom, came in and said, "It's time to go home, Elo." I'm like, "No, I don't want to go home. I want to stay with you." "You can't stay with us." I'm like, "No, I want to stay with you." And I remember pleading that I didn't want to go home. Even though I missed my mom, I wanted to stay. It was a feeling inside of me I wanted to stay. She goes, "No, you have to go home." And I'm like, "Okay." And the next thing I remember is waking up in my bed in my room and opening my eyes, and it was morning. And I remember looking down and looking around, trying to find some sense that I was on the ship and the experiences that I had, but there was nothing except for my memories. And I told my mom, I woke up and told my mom, I had, this experience, and she was in psychology. Bless her. I love my mom, but she's kind of hard to talk to sometimes. And she just said, "Come and sit on my lap." So I sat on her lap. She says, "James," she called me Jimmy. And she said, "Sometimes we have what's called vivid dreams. And in these vivid dreams, they can seem so real, but they're not. They are just an imagination that your mind has created." I was like, "Mom, no, it's real." She goes, "Honey, no, it's not. It's not real. It was a very good dream, but it's not real." And I started to get upset. And that's when she put her arm around me and said, "Honey, it was just a great dream, and let's just leave it at that." And throughout my whole life, that was her answer to everything. It's a great dream. It's a vivid dream. Just leave it at that. And so, that was just one of my first experiences of being there. But it was kind of strange because I felt like I was on the ship for a whole day. I mean, it was a long period of time.
Yeah.
But somehow they manipulated time that it was only from, 11, 12 o'clock at night or so till in the morning. So it was a different thing to be able to do.
I was going to ask you, James, that, a lot of times when people go out, have these experiences, it's more vivid. It's more real than real, in these experiences. So when you come back, you're like, man, when I was out there, I mean, colors are more enhanced, they're more vivid, wow, everything's accentuated, more so because your mind filters a lot out of it when you're out on the other side.
Well, this reminds me a little bit of, not to go here, but just to bring it up, some near-death experiences where there is out-of-body experience, the increased awareness of everything around you and the brightness of things. This is what it reminds me of.
Yes.
So I wonder if there's some commonalities there. When
Oh,
you break
absolutely.
free from the
I
flesh.
mean, it could. It could be. All my experiences have been very, where I know I was there, very tangible type of a thing. But just kind of help your viewers bring perspective in. I'll jump a little ahead, like maybe 50 years or more ahead.
Thank you for listening to High Strangeness. This was a glance at some of the strange that exists in our reality.